Please help me welcome Loren Norris.
I just realized I still have paint on my hands from painting yesterday. And not just the revelation that I have paint on my hands, but there's another awareness that comes to mind when I realize I have paint on my hands. And it's not one that I was really wanting to talk about because it's not something I like to admit, but I guess it's true. And so we're going to talk about how a bigger vision attracts bigger leaders on this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I've heard John Maxwell say it for years that I've been studying him. If your dream can be accomplished by you alone, your dream's not big enough. If your vision doesn't demand that other people chime in and participate, then your vision is too small. Maybe it's the vision that you see that's too small. Maybe it's the projections that you have for yourself, the way that you believe in yourself, what you actually think you can accomplish. Maybe that's what's too small. Maybe the idea of how you will impact the world, maybe that's what's too small. Maybe your belief in yourself is what's too small. Maybe your selfishness says, I'm going to do it so that I can be successful, so that I can put the money in the bank, so that I can buy the house and the cars and have the notoriety. Maybe all of those things come together and impact the vision that you have. The law of magnetism, John Maxwell talks about in the leadership capacities. You've got to raise the level of your lid. You've got to raise the skill set of your leadership. But then he goes on to say that 10s attract 10s. And 7s and 8s attract 5s and 6s. Wait, what happened to 10s and 10s? Why isn't it 8s and 8s? And if you're a level 6 leader, you're going to attract 4s and 5s. Why is that? Well, because the further you go down the leadership scale, the more likely you have your own leadership issues, and you really don't want people around you that can match you or exceed you. I run into that a lot. I've run into that many times in my life. And if you ask leaders who have always had a gift for communication, always had a penchant for leadership, you'll find that they very quickly roll into places where leadership is needed. And yet the person currently in charge doesn't want to bring in another leader that may be even with or a little better than them. And so they get pushed aside. I know that sounds very personal, very trite, very woe is me. That's not my point at all. What I am saying, though, is I've been in many situations where I believe, and others have said, why don't you step up and help with X, Y, and Z, or A, B, and C? And when I've offered to do that, when I've actively participated, I get shut down. I get pushed back. I get, no, we don't need that from you. We need you over there doing whatever that is. You know, we need a volunteer to sweep the garage, to pick up trash in the parking lot. If you could do that, that would be huge for us. You know, we've been in the AV industry for over 20 years now. There are a lot of people that look at me and go, if you could run microphones and cameras, that would be awesome. If you'll help with that, that would be great. And I'm like, I can, but I can also train your Sunday school teachers. I can also train your communicators. I can also help those who speak on behalf of your organization to raise funds. I can help them become better communicators and better leaders and change their perceptions on the things that they present about your organization. No, we don't need that. We need you with a broom. See, that level 4, 5, 6 leader, they don't want a 6, 7, or 8 in their capacity under them because they won't be under them long. A 4, 5, or 6 leader attracts start out leaders, 2 or 3 leaders, people who are just getting their feet under them as leaders. But when you find yourself in an environment where there are a lot of 10s around, they know their space. They know what they're good at. They also know what they're not good at. They know what needs to be done, and they know who to delegate it to and how. Which brings me to my paint under my fingernails. Yesterday, I spent the majority of the day doing the touch-up paints on our mobile studio. Well, this has been a project that's been underway for a while, and we keep getting some of the gross aspects of the project done, and then the finer details, we realize that's not quite perfect. Let's make this little modification to it. And each time we go back and do that, guess who does most of those modifications? Yep, that's me out there with the skill saw, with the Dremel. That's me out there with the rivet gun and the screws and putting the steel plates underneath the floor and modifying the back door from a sliding door to a hinged door and making sure that it closes airtight as much as possible to keep the light under control. Yeah, that's me. With my son or my daughter or daughter-in-law or my wife. And why is it me? And that's my aha moment. Because what I want you to get today is what I've been studying recently with John Maxwell, and that is the bigger the vision, the more it attracts leaders around you. And if your challenge has been that I can't find myself with a whole lot of 10s, maybe it's because you don't attract 10s because your vision is not big enough. Maybe it's because you don't put yourself in the place of other 10s that are already doing something. You don't join up with forces that are already going. Larry Blackaby says, if you want to see something really fantastic, join a project that's already in motion that goes in the same direction of your vision. You don't always have to start something new. That's pretty powerful. It's also a challenge for 4, 5, and 6 level leaders because 4, 5, and 6 level leaders are looking for success. As John Maxwell says, when you're seeking success, you will probably not find significance. But if you've ever tasted significance, success won't satisfy you anymore. What's the difference? Well, success is when it impacts my bank account. Success is when it impacts my reputation. Success is when people look at me and go, look what you've accomplished. Look what you've done. That's so incredible. Significance is when they can't find you in the equation at all, but they look at the movement. They look at the progress. They look at the number of people served. They look at how things have actually been accomplished, and they go, that was a great campaign. That was a great project. That was an enormous vision. Look at all the people that came around it. Oh, there's a juxtaposition there all of a sudden. The bigger the vision, the bigger the leaders it attracts. If you're a level 10 leader, you attract level 10 leaders. If you're at 8, you might attract 6 and 7s. Well, now here's your chance to train them up, to bring them into something bigger. So how does a bigger vision attract more people? One of the challenges that we find, especially as leaders growing and developing, is that it's really easy to see a project and think to yourself, where do I fit in that project? Now, if it's a small project and it's, half a dozen people or so, and you think to yourself, well, I see myself helping with that project because I like what they're doing. I like what their goals are. I appreciate their vision. I'm enamored by their contemplative goals, what they plan to do. And I think I could fit in like this. And you realize very quickly that your presence, your skill set, your talents, your abilities, your desires, your passions, they fit the vision, but there's like 4 people already doing that part of it. Well, now how do you fit without becoming a personality clash or a competition for attention or a competition for accomplishment? If the vision is only that big, you got to wedge yourself in there. That's going to be a problem. When a leader comes on board with your project, with your vision, the first question they're asking is there even a place for me? Do they need me in this project? Will my presence make this campaign even bigger? I have a friend who spent 40 years as the CEO of an organization, 40 years in the same organization. And when he stepped out of that, he stepped into a volunteer role. And in that volunteer role, he worked his way up from volunteer to being on the board to being the CEO of this nonprofit organization for many, many years. And with budget constraints after the pandemic, has moved back to a volunteer role. But in all of those capacities, when he approaches someone else and says, this is what our nonprofit is doing, whether he's the CEO or a head volunteer, is not relevant. People respect him because of his past accomplishments. People respect him because of his leadership skills. People respect him because of the proven ability to get things done. The challenge for a lot of people is in an organization that has a very small scope, a very small ability to accomplish, or even desire to accomplish. They ask themselves, is there room for me in this? If this nonprofit had a vision that could be done by one or two people, chances are someone the caliber of a CEO who's been in place for 4 decades in the same company would not fit into a small nonprofit with a small projection, a small nonprofit with a small footprint, a small nonprofit with a small impact. But when that vision is to say, we want to put shoes on 100,000 children's feet around the world, and it's going to cost about $20 a kid to do that, that's a pretty big vision. I mean, you're talking a couple $1 million just for that one aspect. Well, then to say we also want to make sure they have school clothes and backpacks and fresh water, depending on where they're at in the world and what their need is. We want to meet all those needs all over the world for as many people as we can. Well, all of a sudden, 100,000, when there's almost 8 billion people on the earth, 100,000 is a really small number. But if you're a nonprofit that serves a community of 10,000 and, every year you provide 100 pairs of shoes, 100,000 is a huge jump. I mean, that's 1,000 times the size. So how many people does it take to pull off 100 shoes in a community versus how many people does it take to pull off a project like 100,000 shoes all over the earth? That's the difference between a small vision and a big vision, and the kind of leader that's attracted to join a project. Now, there are projects in almost every community that make sure that kids have backpacks when the school season starts, to make sure that kids whose parents are in prison get a Christmas present, to make sure that there are relationships built for Boys and Girls Club, for the Big Brothers Big Sisters, for the YMCA. There are projects that are community size. There are projects that are statewide. There are projects that are US bound, and then there are projects that are global. If the leadership that you are conducting, you personally, like me personally, is minimized in scope such that you alone can live it out, you don't have a very big dream. You don't have a very big vision. You don't have a very big project or scope, which is what I have to be aware of myself when I realize this one project, this mobile studio to get out in the public and be able to record our projects, our podcasts and our media events in a public arena out in the streets without all the background noise. That concept, it's not brand new. And I'm not the only one doing it. There are other people that do a very similar thing. But in my sphere of influence, I haven't invited a whole lot of other people to participate in this project. That's why I have paint under my fingernails, because every step of the way I've thought, well, I can do this part and I can do that part and I can do this part. And I've never taken that vision to a big enough place to say, A, I need some help, and B, look at the scope of this. Now, we have an objective by the end of 2025 to collect 5,000 very short stories. It's just 2 questions. It's not real complicated stuff. But 5,000 of them, I mean, that's almost 500 a month. That's 150 a week. That means every weekend I got to be doing something to be getting these 5,000 stories together. And I spent this weekend spray painting, touching up, cleaning up. I'm not collecting stories at that point. But at some point, I've got to have a big enough vision expressed to enough people, constantly talked about, that other leaders begin to gather around and go, here's what I could contribute to that. I want to be a part of that. Here's how I could pitch in. I want to step up and because that's not happening, what it means is my vision's not big enough, or I haven't told enough people. So what is the project you're working on? Is it big enough to attract a crowd? Is it big enough for people to look from outside and go, ooh, I want to be a part of that. I see what you're doing. I see where you're going with that. I want in on it. Is it big enough that people can see themselves fitting into the picture without wedging themselves in or overlapping 5 other people and competing now for the attention or the opportunity? See, when you've got a big enough vision to attract 8s, 9s, and 10s, just their presence begins to attract more 8s, 9s, and 10s on the scale of their leadership. If your project only makes room for the beginners, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Start with those who want to be interns. Start with those who want to grow up into leadership and lead them. Give them opportunity. Find space for them. There are a lot of nonprofits. Churches are probably one of the most easily explainable. But I've had some coaching clients who are pastors of small churches. When I say small, this particular church I'm thinking of was about 300 people, but they've been at that same level for like 20 years. And I asked, what's your onboarding process like? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, when a new volunteer comes in, a new attendee comes to the church, and they're trying to decide, will I make this my home church or am I just passing through? How do you invite them to do more than show up on Sunday and sit in the pew? And he said, well, they just kind of plug in wherever they want to. We leave that up to them. I said, well, is there a path? He said, well, what do you mean? So if you got somebody who walks in the door, you don't know them from anywhere, you don't have any reputation background on them, you don't know what their skills or their training are, you don't know what their capabilities are or their competencies. If they just walked in and went, hey, I want to teach a class, would you give them a classroom and say, hey, go for it, get some people in there and teach away? He's like, oh, no, because we don't know what they would be teaching. Oh, so there is a process. Well, there's not really a process, but we don't put just anybody in that class. You see the conundrum here? Well, there's got to be a process to onboard them. How big is the vision? What is the opportunity? How long will it take them to be prepared for that? See, every organization of every size needs to know what it takes for a brand new leader to walk in. If they're great at leadership and communication, but they're new to your organization, there should still be a process. There should be a vetting process, a maturing process, a getting to know each other process. This is like a dating relationship, only newer and riskier. Well, maybe not riskier. It's not going to end in a marriage, but it could end in a long-term partnership. I mean, a CEO that's been around 40 years probably didn't walk in as a CEO. I believe if you look at the Maxwell leadership, the big team, the corporate level team, under which the John Maxwell coaches fit, and so does Maxwell training when you hire the Maxwell team to come in and train. All of that is under a guy by the name of Mark Cole. He's the CEO and president under John Maxwell. But Mark Cole literally started off in the mailroom. Now, it's been a few decades, but he started off in the mailroom and has worked his way up all the way to the CEO position. Why? Well, because he started off with a onesie or twosie, learning what leadership was like, learning what it meant to serve others, learning what it meant to be loyal and dedicated, learning what it meant to understand the vision and carry out that vision every step of the way. Well, your organization has to do the same thing. But on the one hand, you've got that question, is my vision even big enough to bring people in and train them up? Is there an opportunity for people to join and then grow? If the vision isn't big enough to do that, there's no place for them to get on board. There's no task, no role, no assignment, no skill set that you can look at them and go, if you have these skills, jump in. And then if you've contributed those skills and you also want to move to this, then we've got a place for that. We've got a process for that. We've got a path for that. If your organization, if your vision, if your project, if your campaign is so small that you can do it all yourself, perhaps you should ask yourself, if I took all the things that I do in the course of a week and made a chart, what parts of it would I be comfortable handing off to somebody else? And if I were going to hand it off to somebody else, what are the skill sets that would be necessary for each person in each of those categories to be successful with that thing? What do they need to know? What do they need to do? I mean, in our organization, my tiny little organization, I've never really thought about growing it to 40 or 50 people. It's never really crossed my mind. Why? Well, I'm in the studio right now, literally by myself. I don't think there's anybody else in the entire building. I've already written the outline for this teaching. I've already done all the social media pre-work for this. So literally when it's done, I will finish this project, this teaching. I will edit this video project, this teaching. I will place it into all the places to syndicate it on all of the platforms that carry it. Some of those can take it from one source and put it on many, like the podcast aspect of it. Some of those I have to reset everything in it from yesterday's podcast and produce it again. And some of those I have to rewrite the text again and again to be able to get them to go the way they need to go. That will take about 2 hours of my time. That's 2 hours of post-production after I did the teaching, after I wrote the outline. And since there's nobody else in the building, I'm the only one producing this, which means I'm responsible for the camera angles, I'm responsible for the lighting, I'm responsible for the video feed, for the roll-ins, for the quality of the microphone. There's nobody else in the building doing this. Now, ultimately, when I reach that level of trust and when my vision is big enough, I'll have a team of people that do this. Now, I've reached a place where I can but don't like to when I have clients in the studio to interview, when I have guests on the show. I don't like to try to produce that, running the switcher and doing the interview, but I can. We have all of the switching equipment on a rolling table, so I can put it right next to myself at the seated host position and run all the cameras. Been there, done that many times. Ideally, though, I have a producer who sits in another room or at minimum across the room from me and runs all the switcher. Again, if your vision is so small that you can do it by yourself, your vision is not big enough. The bigger your vision, the bigger it will attract leaders. And the bigger your vision, the bigger the leader that you will attract. Well, I haven't envisioned this project big enough to do that. Guess whose fault that is? Yep, the guy with the paint under his fingernails. The guy who's been painting all the windows and moving all the equipment and showing up with a microphone in one hand and a camera in the other and putting them down to speak at the front of the room and then picking them up again to go on to the next person. Yeah, this guy. Why? Well, because I haven't really established what I want to be when I grow up. I'm getting a little long in the tooth to be waiting to grow up, but that's my own challenge. That's my own question. What will I do next? What do I want to do? What do I want this big vision to be? When I hand it off to somebody else, what will they be doing? If I had 10 more people on my team, what would they be doing? What parts of the daily tasks could I disseminate? And who would be qualified for that? What would their competency levels be? See, these are the same questions that I challenge my clients to ask. And for the most part, I do my trainings, I do my videos, I write the scripts, I write the courses, I build the online academy, and 90% of that I do myself. That's a flaw. I'm going to fix it in 2025. I'm going to grow this thing so big in 2025 that I have to have 10 team members. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. But like I said in the last podcast, commitment is inconvenient. If it was easy, everybody would do it. If leadership was easy, everybody would do it. There are a lot of people who think they can lead, but they really can't. I get a lot of fulfillment out of what I do and the one-on-one clients that I help. But I think we could help a lot more. I think we could grow this to the next level. I think we could reach a place where I need 10 coaches doing what I do. I need 20 people producing the videos. I need people who can take that mobile rig out into the marketplace and serve people, and I don't even have to be there. I think we can get there. I need to craft a vision big enough that demands that I have 10 other people to pull it off. I haven't done that yet. If you're watching this and you know me personally, I invite you to hold me accountable to that. Ask me, well, what does that look like? How's that going? What's next? Where would I fit in? Who are the people you need on your team to pull this off? What would that look like if they were on your team? Because those are the same questions I'd be asking my coaching clients. Same questions I will be asking my coaching clients as I continue to work with them to grow their leadership in their organizations. I should be trying to do that myself in this organization, but I got to change my view, my perspective of this organization, of who we are and what we do. It's not just me. There should be much more of us. I'm going to get busy on that. I challenge you to hold me accountable to that. And if you're part of the circle, if you're part of the Story Power Academy at whatever level, especially if you're in the mastermind level, we're going to hold you accountable to that too. What's the next level of your vision? Who are the people you need on your team? What are their core competencies? Then how will you grow this vision beyond yourself until you realize, I can't do this on my own and I need a team of people to do it. And here's what that team would look like. I hope you'll take that challenge seriously. I hope you'll move from success to significance, that you'll get to a place where you've tasted significance and success just doesn't satisfy anymore. I hope that's true for you in 2025. And I'm also going to throw out the challenge. I know there are a lot of people who are loving AI and loving everything that it can do, from DeepSeek to all these others. Great on you. Have fun with that. I just know that your emotional capacity, your communication capacity, your capacity and desire to study, your capacity and desire to lead, they can atrophy as fast as your legs. If you choose to sit in a wheelchair all day long, even if you're not limited in your physical ability, if you sit in that chair long enough, your legs will give up on you. And when your legs give up on you, your life gets shorter. Believe me, ask Gary Brecka and some of those guys. If you're not developing your leadership skills and you're counting on AI to do it for you, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt one day. It's just my humble opinion. But I don't think I would trust a computer to do for me what my personal relationships do for me. And I would hope you would have that same level of concern for the people around you. Oh yeah, AI is smart. It can access a lot of data. It can do a lot of things. But it can't love people. And that's what leadership is really about. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I encourage you to go to storypoweracademy.com and check it out. Look at the different classes, the different levels, the different things that are available. You can take a lot of them a la carte. But spend some time there and see if that's the kind of thing that would change the way you communicate as a leader, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a political leader. And if that will help you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, only 10 people in the elite speakers. You will have to apply for that. But if you're a candidate, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm Loren Norris with Story Power Academy. I look forward to seeing you inside.